Hey guys, I'm back again and I'm super excited to show you this interview. It's finally, with weeks of waiting, it's finally now coming onto your screen. Here is the one and only interview with Mark Ryan. Enjoy.
Permission to speak, sir. Permission granted, old friend.
You speak now?
I wish to stay with the boy.
What sort of hideous mausoleum is this? Answer me, pawns and knaves! Show yourselves, or suffer my infinite wrath!
Speak for yourself, Ratchet. And it will be destroyed. Then I guess we better find the machine first.
I feel sorry for you, Prime. Your allegiance, these humans. The trouble with loyalty to a cause is that the cause will always betray you.
It's a well-known story, but when Transformers first came out in the UK, I was working on a TV show called Robin of Sherwood. So
Yeah.
the first 3 years of my life were dedicated to that, and we didn't get much chance to sit and watch television, I'm afraid. So I never even saw the original cartoon on British television. It never crossed my threshold. It wasn't until later on that I became aware of what it was and what it was about and all that kind of stuff. So, I had a lot of catching up to do when we did the films.
Oh, that's cool. Regards to when you did Bumblebee in the first film, is that kind of like when you knew that this franchise existed, or did you have to do a little bit more research before that?
No, I knew the franchise existed, and I knew Hasbro about Hasbro, and I knew about the toys, I knew about some of the characters even. I mean, I knew Bumblebee and Optimus Prime. I mean, I understood what their roles were and all that kind of stuff, but I'd never watched any show in depth. So when I actually got the first film, I had to go away. That's when I started doing the research, which was actually quite good, actually, because I came at it completely fresh. I had no preconceived G1 ideas of what this should be about at all. I know that's going to horrify some Transformers fans, but it's just the truth. I didn't. And the job, though, however, was not just me voicing different characters. I was actually physically on the set as the
That's cool.
characters.
That's
So
cool.
to me, it was, yeah. I mean, I was on the set of all five films, being everybody, being Optimus, being everybody, transform and roll out. So I've been everybody on the set, and then Michael can choose what he wants to use, and that's how I ended up voicing the different characters that I have, because I was physically doing voices on the set, and either Michael liked it or he didn't. So, and he told me quite plainly he liked it or not.
I mean that's funny because Michael knew nothing about Transformers himself. So was there kind of like a relation between you two? Was it kind of like you two discussing on how Bumblebee would sound, where the story would go with Bumblebee, etc.?
Well, it was constructed completely from new. I know obviously Michael had done his research and how he wanted to shoot it, but don't forget this was in the early days, and it's a true story about the very first day on the set. Michael showed me the animatics, which are basically the skeleton drawings of the robots and where they were. And the first scene I was involved with was at the Witwicky house, where all the cars turn up and hide in the garden and around the house. And so when I did the original audition, met with the casting people, talked with them. Um, uh, I'd already done like five. I did a scene with five different voices in it. I played one scene where I was all the characters, and so Michael was kind of like, "Okay, so you can handle this," and he showed me that scene and said, I looked at it and he said, "So this is the scene. This is what we're shooting. This is where the robots are." Blah 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 blah. And I laughed out loud, and he looked at me and said, "Is that funny?" I said, "Because it's funny. You've got giant alien robots hiding underneath a house in Southern California, in Los Angeles."
No, no, no. This isn't hiding. This isn't hiding. This is my backyard, not a truck stop. Oh, God.
I said, "It's funny with the way they're all hunched up like that." He said, "Can you see that?" I said, sure, I can see that. Of course I can see it. And I understand what that scene is. And he went, great, let's go. And that was literally how it started. And it went all the way through
Wow.
for 10 years.
Oh my goodness.
So we,
Well,
we just kind of had I could see what he was trying to get at in his mind. And I have to say, though, I actually think about how that came about was because I'd done a film called King Arthur for Jerry Bruckheimer and Disney in Ireland, and I was the sword master. And as the sword master and fight director, you're involved with a lot of different aspects of the set. You know, the props, the locations. You know, where you were going to work in the locations, dealing with the actors. You know, Keira Knightley, Clive Owen, all that kind of stuff. Mads Mikkelsen. You know, you are in Ray Stevenson. Bless you, wherever you are. Um, so you have to understand a lot about the set and about how it works and the mechanics of the cameras and special effects and lighting. You have to understand all of it. It's not just like you stand in a booth and say the lines. You, when you're on the set, you have to understand there's character and stunts going off and all kinds of stuff. So that was one of the things that I think Michael liked, was that I understood how a set works, and because he certainly does. I mean, he's a little story on the last film. Anthony Hopkins, who I'd met previously, and that's going to that story, but we met in the '80s, and but he recognised me on the set, which was kind of bizarre, which was very nice. Though, but you know, he's such a good man, Anthony Hopkins. And one morning he said, "Mark," he said, "Come here." I said, so I went over. He said, "Michael is really a genius, isn't he?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, he is. I know. I say that." I said, and people kind of get upset about that, and Michael gets a lot of stick. But I said, no, he's a creative genius. He said, I've never seen. So he's coming from Anthony Hopkins, right? Sir Anthony Hopkins. He said, I've never seen a director do what Michael Bay can do. He said, I've worked with a few directors. I said, I know. He said, I've never seen a director be able to pick up a camera, a sound thing, organize a stunt. He said he knows about everything, special effects, CGI. You know, he knows every aspect of the film set. He could do everybody's job on this set. He said, but I've never seen anybody that just pick up randomly any camera that's on the set, and he knows how to work it and run it and all that. He said he's a true genius. I said, well, he's also a geek. This is his life. You
mm,
know, film is his. You know, he lives for this, and it's his passion. And so I said, no, he is really. He's technically quite astounding. So that's where Michael came in.
that's cool. Regards to how Anthony Hopkins, well, Sir Anthony Hopkins precisely, when he says that he's a genius. Now, as someone who, if I can say, someone who's lived in the public fan base eye, if that makes sense, and there's a bit of a divide between the G1 and the Bayverse fans. I am a Bayverse fan as well as a G1 fan as well. Has there ever been a moment where online or in person, because I know he had a lot of issues on Age of Extinction, which I know you did the voice of Lockdown also. So was
Yeah.
there any like sort of type of resolution that he sort of thought maybe we need to look at how the characters are based, what we need to change, the concept art and anything? Was there anything about that on set?
Well, we gave lots of nods. There's a flat nose Optimus Prime in there various times, and you get various. Obviously, there's Beatles and stuff like that. So there are lots of nods to the G1. But when I've been asked this question before, without wanting to outrage your G1 fans, um, the truth is, to me, visually, and having have to visualize a lot of this stuff, right, when you're actually on the set and you're going into the booth to voice stuff, I could never visualize how you would turn G1 into the complexity that's required nowadays to
Mm.
make a visual spectacle, because they're very blocky, they're very simple. Yes, they turn into this or that or whatever they turn into, but in their actual basic drawings, because they're cartoons, are extraordinarily simple. And if you've got that on a wide, that multi-dimensional visual spectacle that you have with the Bayverse, because without all that internal, you see all the internal workings rotating and changing, expanding. I don't know how you would do that with the blocky G1 versions. So the redesigning, the reimagining of all the vehicles and of the robots themselves, I thought was absolutely a necessity to bring it into a new generation. You know, not just for the G1 fans, but you've got new kids coming in now who never saw G1. So you have to cater for them, and they're used to a much more sophisticated visual scape when they're looking in a movie. So you can't make it simple. It has to be complex. It has to be intricate, which I think Industrial Light and Magic ILM did a fantastic job making all that internal workings, and some of the special effects and some of the Autobots and Decepticons that they made were just brilliant, brilliant.
Um, I know exactly. As someone who's obviously doing a film course, I know how, with fan base and how there's a bit of a divide, and trying to overrule, one aspect to compromise it for like a new aspect for us with technology, how you have to put every part together to make it look really realistic. So I really do agree on that point. So that's a very good point. In terms of the visual effects and stuff, when you got to see Lockdown for the very first time and knowing that he was a Lamborghini, was it kind of like a "oh yeah" moment, or was it kind of like "oh okay"?
Well, the truth is that I very rarely know much about the script until we actually start shooting. So sometimes with characters, I haven't even known what the character was until we get onto the set. And certainly with Lockdown, I didn't know it was going to be a Lamborghini. I may have been aware that there was a Lamborghini on the set and eventually on the set at some point, but I wasn't. I can't remember being aware of it. Let's put it that way. What actually happened was we were shooting in a quarry. I think it was in Detroit with Mark Wahlberg, and it was the scene where he sends out the little robot sort of flying visual thing from the Bugatti.
This drone I stole recorded footage of an Autobot raid. It's in pieces. Watch what happens here.
Oh, that's Leadfoot.
They rip them apart.
Savages.
And it gets projected onto the wall of the quarry. And I was actually in this little trailer that I was in at the top, waiting to go down there, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea at that point. This is absolutely true. What voice was going to come out of my head? And I was racking my brains because, again, it's not that Michael doesn't tell you what he wants until he does when you get there. But he's very good, and I appreciate this. He lets you create. He let me create. He didn't sort of say, "I want it like this. I want it like that." He would see what I brought, and if he liked it, he'd go, "Okay." I knew because it would be a okay, like it. And if he didn't, he'd say, "Can you do something else? Is there something else we can do?" So I was up the top of the quarry waiting to go down there to shoot, and uh, I was watching the TV actually, and there was an advert for Jaguar cars, which I don't think it was ever shown here. And I don't know who voiced it, to be honest with you, but it was something like, "Why are all the bad guys in Hollywood films British? Is it because there's a certain accent? Is it because of certain coolness?" And this whole advert, and I was sitting there watching this about this Jaguar car and listening to this advert, and suddenly into my head dropped Anthony Hopkins. Absolutely. No, I was Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, he should be a cross between um, uh, Hannibal Lecter and Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. So I was trying to come up with this voice, this Anthony Chigurh detached character, because obviously from the dialogue I understood that he was probably one of the more interesting Transformers in the sense that he was independent and didn't owe anything to anybody, was acting basically on his own volition, and was acting as he wasn't He didn't care about Autobots or Decepticons. He didn't care about any of it. He was doing his own thing, and he was something of an interesting character because of that. And so I was trying to give him an element of something that was different that hadn't been seen before in the other films. And I went to the sound guys, Peter and the boys that were my best mates on the set because they saved me lots of times. And normally I was wired if I have earphones on so I can hear them and hear the other actor or hear Michael. I've got a microphone here so that they can hear. He did it like that. Yes, I have come for you. I used to do everything that quiet, so Anton Chigurh, but that clean. But the speakers pumped up the volume, and literally as I'm running along the side of the car, I looked across at Michael. Michael looked at me and he went, so I knew I was, probably in the ballpark. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I absolutely was. Now, bear in mind, I saw this on my birthday, my 15th birthday, and I have to say, Lockdown was menacing. He was scary for me. I think he could personally beat Megatron's butt if he had to. With the voice, I mean, the voice, it was spot on. So what you did was really, really well. Thank you for that.
Thank you. It's one of my favorites. I mean, people ask me about Bumblebee and Jetfire. Obviously, Jetfire was very popular.
Jetfire.
He's actually my mate Ray Winston. Actually, Michael asked that. Who are you doing? I'm saying it's my mate Ray Winston. Okay, what you up to? West Ham got beat last night. Did you watch it? What a bloody awful game. So I'm actually doing my mate Ray Winston. We've known each other about 40 years.
No way.
So I spoke, we speak all the time. I spoke to him yesterday for my birthday. So Lockdown is Jetfire is actually Ray Winston. And so he was one of the most interesting characters, and I enjoyed playing him because I think it gave an ambiguity to the whole thing. Because I've been asked about, how do I feel about, how do you feel about the idea of aliens, and is there an alien? Could there be aliens out there? Because it's a big subject out there at the moment. It's all being talked about in America about woodworks, and I said I personally believe that life is teeming in the universe out there. I believe there's life out there. I know from some of my service that we are flying very advanced craft that people have not seen yet. I know that. And I know that some of them are shapes that you look at and go, there's no wings. How are they staying in the air? What's keeping them up in the air? So I know that there's stuff out there that we have not seen. I don't personally know whether what has just come out about the revelation that America has actually got retrieved crashed vehicles, except I've had hints at it from people that I've spoken to about things like that, people at JPL and at NASA that have there's been various wigs and nonsense going, there's stuff going on, we just can't talk about it. And it'll be interesting. And I personally believe, and I've said this publicly, I said, it's possible that if a race of entities out there is millions and millions of years older than we are, that they have transferred the essence of their consciousness into mechanical vehicles that they use instead of bodies. So they don't have bodies, or they grow their bodies, or they transfer it into, we're now looking at AI, right? They've transferred their consciousness into another type of vehicle, i.e. a vehicle that can morph its shape and can change its shape and can copy, stuff here on Earth. So I didn't think it was that far out. I know that sounds weird to a lot of people, but to me, it's always been something in the back of my mind when I went, there's nothing that I could not accept is possible. And if there are people, other races out there, which I believe there are, then it's possible that, they might not think like us. They might not eat like us. They probably don't speak like us. They certainly don't speak English. They communicate in different ways. And they probably have a different emotional background. They have different ways of functioning. So we have to give up the idea that everything has to look like man and human beings, because there's no rule that says that. I know some people believe that there is. I don't believe there is. I believe that everything's possible out there, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there were aliens that looked, like mechanical creatures but were sentient. So I think it's a very interesting time, for humanity. If this is true, if America does really have and retrieved vehicles, which we put it in the film, not only that, these metamaterials that they're talking about, there are metamaterials now which have not yet been revealed, publicly and stuff. Well, some of it has been, but it hasn't. We haven't seen the effect yet it's going to have on modern society. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there yet which has been kept under wraps, which will slowly come out as time goes on.
And yeah, I mean, regards to aliens and invasions and stuff, uh, as I've already said, I'm doing a film course at my university, and we did a sci-fi module, specifically on like aliens, invasions, and stuff. From when you did Bumblebee to Lockdown, was there kind of like more questionable thoughts on what if stuff like Bumblebee or Lockdown, not from a robotic standpoint, but like them in general, was there ever a thought that maybe this life is out there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been asked that question. I've been asked what we were just talking about, and I said, well, what makes particularly Bumblebee and Optimus Prime acceptable to the general audience is that they show human traits. They have human traits. They're loyal. They're empathetic. They're willing to stand up for what they believe in. There's a whole bunch of traits that you would want to have in your best friend or your partner that both of those characters exhibit, and they are universally positive human traits. Don't forget human beings also have bad traits. They also have negative traits, destructive traits as well. And if I were an alien race at the moment looking at Earth and looking at the trouble that we have actually got down here on the ground, to me, it's totally understandable that they don't want to reveal themselves to us. I'm sure that they observe us and look at us as some kind of negative virus. They don't want us running around the galaxy, not yet. We're not prepared. We're not civilized enough. We can't control our own impulses to go to war. We can't control our own impulses to invade other nations. So why would they turn that virus loose into the galaxy? I don't think that they, at the moment, are like, they don't want to reveal themselves too much. I mean, the only way that that would happen would be if it was to sort of help, or we got to a brink, let's say, of a nuclear catastrophe, then that's maybe when they would partly reveal themselves. But in terms of an invasion, let's just dispel that. Any alien race that can traverse the universe or even a galaxy, never mind the universe, just a galaxy, any alien race that can traverse a galaxy that's been around for millions of years longer than us, if they wanted to, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they could have taken this all over. And they haven't. They haven't arrived and gone, right, humanity, we're going to clean you out now. We're going to put, you belong to us now. That hasn't happened. If they wanted to, they could. Whatever propulsion systems and physics, advanced physics that they've developed that allows them to wormhole their way across galaxies. We yet don't have the means, the methods, or even the understanding of how that could function. They're working on it. I know they're working on it, and I know they've got some patented ideas of how that might work, both anti-gravity, superconductors, and various other inventions that they've got that would one day probably help us get out into space and interstellar space. But at the moment, we don't even understand how they're functioning. So I think for the moment that if there's an alien race out there observing us and they've been even in contact with humanity, they're going, you guys are not ready yet. You're not prepared, not only just to understand your place in the galaxy, but even to understand that this urge to wage war and be destructive and waste what you've got is not wanted out there. That you have to learn a bit more. That doesn't mean there's not more than one race. There could be more than one race that literally does think that we should just be wiped off. But I probably think that they're so advanced, these races and these other civilizations, that they're going, no, leave them to it. They'll get there at some point in the proceedings. They're just not there yet.
Yeah.
Dialogue, so I knew what the character was, and I could build the character around the what the dialogue that I got, and I was trying to make him exactly what Michael wanted, which was this crotchety old figure that had just woken up after sleeping for God knows how many years. And lo and behold, there's an SR-71. And I actually did it when I was in the booth and it was revealed to me it was going to be an SR-71. I went, yes! Because an SR-71 is, to me, quite the most extraordinary vehicle I think I've ever seen. I don't know if you've ever been close to one. I have. I've been close to a couple. And there's one, funnily enough, down the road.
When the film came out, and I see him, obviously you see Shia, Megan, and the rest of the cast. When I saw that huge aircraft, I thought this is gonna be my favorite jet of all time. And ever since Revenge of the Fallen, SR-71 Blackbird has been my favorite jet to this day. I'm so glad Jetfire was an SR-71 as well. So
we're not far away from the Duxford Imperial War Museum here, and they actually have an SR-71 parked up inside, and you can literally walk around it and look at it. And I've seen one. I couldn't touch it. It was actually on a big metal pole in San Diego, and I've got pictures of me with this SR-71. But they actually had one there which you can actually walk around and actually look at it and stuff like that. It was fantastic, and it's actually much bigger actually than I remembered. I remember looking at it and thinking, no, it's bigger than I remembered. But you can walk around it and look at it from various angles, and from some angles it completely almost disappears. If you look at it from the back and the tail, all you see is the two engines, and the long nose just vanishes. And if you look at it from other angles, literally, it's difficult to make out the shape, which is the entire purpose. And again, as I've said to people, you have to try and remember that aircraft was thought up and built in the late 50s.
Yeah.
Was flying. It was being tested in the late 50s and flying in the 60s. So it's still the fastest aircraft that we know of its type anyway, and still holds several world records. So that aircraft was built and flown in the late 60s and late 50s and early 60s, and we have yet not seen what replaced it. Something did replace it. I know that, but we have not seen yet what replaced it, and on what shape of aircraft and how it flies and what its propulsion system is. So to me, the SR-71 is really a reminder, because I read this all the time online. When you read stuff about what's going on, they go, oh, governments can't keep a secret. Governments can keep a secret. If they want to keep it secret, they can keep a secret. This I know. And don't forget that aircraft flew in and out of the UK as well as Japan for 20 years. It flew into the United Kingdom. And nobody knew it was an SR-71. Nobody knew it was the Blackbird. It was kept a secret for all that time. It wasn't until it was revealed in the 70s that there was possibly an aircraft that was doing what it was supposed to do. So, governments can keep a secret. If they want to keep a secret, don't ever believe this stuff online about, oh, governments can't keep a secret. They can.
Wow. I mean, obviously recently you went back to visit your old pal. Between 2008, maybe 9, to now, do you still get like really nostalgic seeing him going, hey, it's Jetfire, hey, it's him. How you doing, buddy?
I think it's like any it's like anything that you're involved with. I try to, it's like Robin and Sherwood, for instance. I mean, we're still friends after 40 years, all the Robin and Sherwood boys, the Merry Men, Clyde Mantle, Jason Connery, and Ray and I. We're still mates after all this time. And so there is a certain but it's a warm nostalgia. You look back and you realize how precious that time was, and you'll never do that again, right? And that's one of those things about this industry that you have to learn to appreciate. Is I'm standing on Launchpad 39A at NASA with a space shuttle there, and I was one of the 6 people that was allowed to stand on that sacred ground where man set off to stand on the moon. I stood on that launch pad when we filmed there with Shire and with Michael, and there were 6 of us were cleared to be there. And I'm stood looking at Endeavour, the space shuttle. Very few people are ever going to get that honor to be able to stand there and be next to a space shuttle, for God's sake. So there are things in the films that you look back on, you go, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to get that. So you lock it away in your little, book of memories and go, that was a sacred time. It was a special event. And to remember it with joy, which I do. I mean, I had a lot of fun on those films. So it was hard work, don't get me wrong. Michael is a demanding director. You turn up with your A game, and he expects you to show up and be there and be on it. You know what I mean? And be ready to play. Michael is a taskmaster on the set, and he drives the crew hard, but he rewards them well, and he looks after them, and he treats them well. So it's like anything. If you want to get the best out of people, look after them. Particularly feed them. Feed a film crew well, and you'll get what you want out of it.
There's the catch.
And
There's the catch.
I look back on it as a good. Yeah, and I made some friends. I made friends as well. Ian Bryce, who was the producer on the set, and also was one of the saving graces of how the film got made. So a big shout out to Ian Bryce. Brycey was literally hero, because how he held it all together and got it done and remained calm and personable. If you can imagine just what you're talking about, you're talking about shooting at NASA, helicopters, jets, hundreds of extras, explosions, special effects, all of that you have to understand and be able to manage. And Ian was a master of doing that. And so to this day, I've made friends in the industry that I will never. I never forget what they've done. I'm grateful for the support I got from them.
What was your favourite moment in any of the films of Transformers so far? What is your favourite moment specifically?
Well, there's lots of different ones for different reasons. Obviously, NASA Launchpad 39A will be forever in my heart. What can I say? Standing in Bamber Castle with Sir Anthony Hopkins, and literally wanted to shoot a video with me. All the crew wanted to have pictures with him, and so I ended up taking pictures for the crew of him with the crew members. And finally, he said to me, "Do you not want a picture?" And I said, "Well, I'm the cameraman to take a picture." And then after, he said, "No, it's not good. Do it again." So we did another one. He said, "Let's do it better than that. Let's have a video." So there is actually on my Facebook page, and I think it's also on my Instagram, a videogram that Sir Anthony Hopkins insisted that he made with me because I was probably one of the few people that wasn't asking for a picture with him. So that was a memory that I will have burned into my mind. The other one was being with Buzz Aldrin, standing with Buzz Aldrin and shaking. Yeah. I was all of those scenes. I was there for throughout the filming of the series of the franchise. So those moments. So I actually went up. He had his picture taken with all the lads, and eventually everybody went away, and I slipped up quietly because I didn't want to get. Again, I try to stay back, and rather than sort of just jump on people, because I understand what it's like when you're working. But then he was stood on his own, and I went to it and just shook his hand and just said, "Thank you, thank you." Just great. And he was again humble, nice, very intelligent man, very sparkly, bright-eyed. Just enjoying what he was doing. So there's so many memories that night with Michael, as I say, with Lockdown. That was a moment where I went, right, I'm going to enjoy this character. Lockdown is going to be, my tour de force. as a transformer. I'm going to make this mine, and I did, and I felt that I owned the character, and I felt that the character
You certainly did. You certainly did.
something new. I hope they bring him back. I would love it if they brought him back because yeah, they've killed everybody, but they've killed everybody in the past, so there's no reason he couldn't come back. I hope they do. I don't think Lockdown should return. He's still the best, one of the best villains they had. So yeah, there was so many massive memories that you just go. The Blue Room, and it's where they test. It's in Revenge of the Fallen. It's where they test airframes for radar imagery and stuff like that. And your brain naturally almost can't take it in because it's covered from head to ceiling, ground to ceiling, and the walls with these blue foam spikes which absorb all the energy that they're pumping into the thing. So we're filming at Edwards, and I remember standing in that room and got talking to one of the lads, and there's a big gantry where they hang things like F-18s and SR-72s and whatever else they're flying. They hang it from this gantry to see and bombard it with various microwaves and radar to see what the signature is like. And I got talking to one of the lads, and I said, I bet you've seen some stuff. He said, you should have seen what we had in here last week. He said, what was hanging on that gantry last week? He said, we all had to come and look. He said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, I can't tell you what it was. He said, but they brought something in here and hung it in there. It was covered in a sheet. They brought it in, hung it from the gantry, and everybody went, what is that? Never seen anything like it. So he said, no, we've seen some stuff come in here and hang in there and then be quietly wheeled away. So there's so many different memories that I've gone. I remember the first time, the first Camaro, that very first night, in LA when the Camaro pulled up, and we were in literally an area of South Los Angeles, and it was where the cars all drive up together the first time they go underneath the house, and that Camaro pulled up, and I remember we all went out and looked at it. That very first design, everybody went out onto the street and stood there and looked at it and went, "Whoa, what a piece of machinery!" It was so beautiful, and it was so different from
I
everything.
loved Bumblebee's new concept Camaro, and especially the 1967 Camaro SS as well. I mean, I love how Bumblebee is. I mean, originally from being a Volkswagen Beetle to then being this stylish car. I can't think of any other car that Bumblebee would be, apart from a Camaro. And it really suited him really well.
I've been driven around in a couple, and I've been driven around in Aventador as well. And let me tell you, that V8 Camaro, oh, it flies. That thing can move.
I can imagine.
And so with the Lamborghini Aventador, I've never been in a car that can accelerate as fast as that Aventador. That is a real beast. And there's only a couple. I think there's a couple of slate grey ones now in the United Kingdom. And I think Michael's actually got one. I think he's actually got one of the slate grey ones. That matte black, like almost anti-radar reflective coating. And it looked fantastic. And the guy took me for a drive in it. Oh my goodness, can it fly? So, but the Camaro flies as well. Don't get me wrong. That thing can really take off. That engine in there is pretty quick.
Cool. Now, when you did Robin of Sherwood, I watched a couple of clips with the sword fights. Was there any sort of sword fighting training or anything specific that you wanted to incorporate into the fight scenes?
Well, it kind of arrived on my doorstep, as most of these things have in my career, quite unexpectedly. I had done some fencing training at Italia Conti Stage School because obviously in Shakespeare, there's a lot of sword fights. So, it's one of the things you have to cover when you're looking at doing Shakespeare is that you have to understand that there are sword fights. Hamlet for instance, and obviously in the Scottish plays, things like that. So that's stuff that you have to take a look at. And I had trained with a guy called Michael J, known as the Twickenham Samurai. He was the only non-Japanese, well, he was then the only non-Japanese that was accepted as being a sixth Dan Iaido, which is the Japanese sword form. So I'd actually spent a little while working with the katana and that kind of stuff. So I understood the process. I understood what that was about, and balance and leverage and all that kind of stuff. So when we got to actually shoot Robin at Sherwood, we'd already had a couple of weeks of training, just messing about, doing stuff with swords. So we understood what Terry Walsh, our sword master at the time, wanted us to do and how he wanted to do it to make it safe. And so on the very first day of shooting, Ian Sharp, God bless him, came to me and said, do you think you could do a two-handed sword fight? I said, yeah, sure, probably. How long have I got to rehearse? And he went, well, I had about half an hour. And, he said, no, you got 2 weeks. So I said, okay. He said, oh, by the way, you're no longer Edmund the Archer, you're now Nazi the Saracen. So I said, oh, okay, fair enough. So Edmund the Archer, which was what the character was originally called, became Nazi the Saracen and had to do a two-handed sword fight. So Terry Walsh and I, the Swordmaster stunt coordinator, went over to the props to see what we could find. And the props that they actually wanted me to use were absolutely unwieldable. They were just not going to be usable. And I actually balanced them up and said, Terry, these are dangerous. And, if you're trying to do something, you can't really fast with it and you can't do anything, they're almost like they're too big. And so we ended up using basically what were wall hangers so that I could move them quickly and do the two-handed rolling around and all that kind of stuff with it. And they, during the fight, actually, for the most part, came apart. And so we had to get rid of those, ditch those. And I was given two, they're actually 1880s Customs and Excise naval cutlasses. And Teddy took the modern handles off and put, medieval handles on. And I actually have them. They're in with at my home in Nevada. So that style, though, because it had never been done, again, a lot of this stuff had never been done before, we had to invent it for the show. So Michael Praed and I went behind one of the, makeup trucks and just knocked about, worked out a routine for a couple of weeks. And what you see on screen is what we came up with. And that later became something that, and at that point, I thought I was going to get killed at the end of the episode. So I didn't know they were going to keep me on and write me into the show. So we invented that style, not knowing it was going to live beyond that. And so obviously, once they decided they were going to keep me in the show, I had to come up with a few more moves and a few more things that looked visually interesting, because what we discovered was, and what the stuntmen discovered and the stunt team was, that virtually it's unbeatable if you have two short swords against one long sword. It's unbeatable because I can block and cut or parry and move and slice, whatever, with two swords, which a person with one sword can't. They're trying to block two swords coming at the same time. So the stunt guys will sat down and said, we have to come up with something that you can make it look interesting, that you can employ both swords, so it doesn't look like you could just pull one out and stab us, because otherwise it doesn't look right. You could beat us all easily. So I was paid some great compliments by the stunt team, particularly by a man called Alf Joint, who's no longer with us, but he was one of the most respected stuntmen in his day. Alf actually went to, and Terry told me this. He said, you just got a great compliment from Alf Joint. He said you were mustard with them swords. He said, you're really good. And he said, Alf Joint never praises anybody. And the fact that Alf Joint said to me, you know what you're doing, you're really good, is something quite, you take that as a compliment from Alf Joint, because he never compliments anybody. So I think all the stunt team then, we kind of melded together as a unit so we could work out all these different fight routines. And I just had to come up with new moves. So every now and again I had to come up with something and go, oh, that might work, or that might work, like the scissor moves and all that kind of stuff that I used during the thing were invented, out of necessity. So like anything, it was and apparently now it's quite a popular style. And the character, I mean, the Arab character has now been melded into the Robin Hood legend forever. It appears there's always now going to be an Arab merry man in the Merry Merry Band. So I'm
That's
very
really,
proud of
really
that.
good. I mean, when it came to blocking the sword fights, was there ever a moment you've thought, ah, I'll try this, and then you try it, it's like, no, no, don't work. Let's try something else.
Um, there's a couple of things. There was a couple, and one of them particularly I remember because it was one of those moments where they brought in a stuntman to double me to do a jump off a horse to take a guy off and down to carry on with the fight, and uh, the guy did the jump. I could have done it, and I was on Pringle, a horse called Pringle, that was on my. It was actually owned by Robert Young, one of the directors, brilliant director Robert Young. Big shout out to Robert as well. And it was his polo pony, and I kind of adopted Pringle, or Pringle adopted me, whichever way it was. And Pringle had obviously had a few nicks and cuts in his life being a polo pony. He had, he'd obviously been bashed a couple of times. But we got on really. I have to say, I really got on well with him, and I could what's called neck rein, which I could have one hand on the reins and make him move and use one hand with a sword. So it was a useful skill to have and a useful horse to have. And we got on really well. And anyway, Terry wanted me to do a rolling dive between the horse's legs and come up the other side and swipe somebody off the thing. And he asked the stuntman to do it, and the stuntman wouldn't do it. He said, "I'm not doing that. Are you mad? Roll between the horse's legs. He's going to jump up and down on me and kill me." And so I said, "No, I'm not doing that. Roll between the horse's legs." So Teddy came to me and he said, "Will you do it?" And I said, "Sure, yeah." He said, "Sure, no problem." So I went up to talk to Pringle, and I had a little whisper in his ear. And I said, "Pringle, I'm going to roll between your legs. Don't jump up and down on me, please. We know each other. We like each other. There's a good boy. He's a lump of sugar." And we did it. And the first time we did it, it was so fast. I think they kind of missed the whole thing. So they asked me to do it again. So I did it again, and finally they got it in the can. And I think I just did it 2 or 3 times. I can't remember. Certainly, I did it. I did it a couple of times, more than twice, probably 3 times. I did it one way, and then they wanted to get reversed, so I had to do it again to get the swords off the saddle and cut the guy off the horse. So yeah, that was an interesting moment. But I didn't feel at all in danger. I knew Pringle wasn't going to move. I knew he was going to stay put.
Wow, I mean those are pretty cool stories. Funny. Oh my god.
It was great. Robin of Sherwood was one of those moments you look back on your career and go, yeah, I am grateful for being involved with that show, and I'm grateful for what it brought to my life, and the friendships that have endured for this amount of time, for 40 years. No, it was quite a wonderful experience.
Well, just bring it to my last question. Obviously, because we've got 7 minutes left, unfortunately. um, but in terms of, because for me, I've always wanted to be a voice artist since I was 10, because of Peter Cullen, you of course, and other voice actors. I want to be a director as well, and a voice artist, and a scriptwriter. Now, also, you're an author. Um, what was your favorite project that you wrote in terms of story and experience, etc.?
About some of the history, military history, and some of the Transformers history, you read hold fast, because I put a lot of stuff in there, and it had to be vetted by Michael and Disney and cleared and all that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to read some stuff about the background, the history of all that, and there's a lot of stuff in there, some of it about the Germans and Second World War occultism. It's in hold fast.
Wow. Well, I just want to say thank you ever so much. Uh, oh my goodness. I have to say I've been a fan for nearly 20 years, and having the chance to talk to someone like you, it's a highly honor. So I really do appreciate it.
My advice, Stefan, to anybody, if you want to hear this, I'll say it very quickly, is if you want to try and get into this business, if you get a hankering to get into the business, learn everything you can about the business. Learn everything. I've been an extra, a sword master. I've been an actor, voice actor, singer. I've done stage. I've done theatre. I've done all of it. Right, television, film, everything. Learn every skill you can because it always comes in handy. Even on Transformers, the reason that Michael and I got on so well is because I understood what he was trying to do and where the camera was and where the actor was and how the actor felt, where they wanted to move to, the mark was, and where the lighting. I understood it in special effects. So learn every aspect of the business because you will need it all. At some point, somebody's going to go, "Well, can you move that lamp? Or what about that smoke machine or whatever?" You have to understand what that means, and be able to have that knowledge on the set. That's why Bay is successful, and why Tony thinks he's a genius because he can do it, all of it. He understands how the set works. So my advice to anybody that's starting out in the business and wants to get into the business is try and learn it all because it will all come in handy at some point in the proceedings.
I agree. Because at the moment I've just signed on to my last year at uni, so I'm doing a film production project, which is basically I make my own indie film. Then the next semester I work with the other group members,
Uh-huh.
and I'm doing commercial radio. There's a lot of skills in the course. I mean, I've worked in multicams, I've worked on as a floor manager, I've done radio, I've done practically most things that most people at my age would struggle to do.
Good. I mean, that's the way to go. And, be open-minded to what the business brings you. You know what I mean? Be open-minded. Just follow it up, follow your nose, follow your instinct. Just go, just try. You know what I mean? I'm in the process of helping people at the moment try and establish themselves as new directors in the industry. I owe it to the industry to give something back to some of these projects, and just supporting people. And the industry will need that. We need good, positive material that makes you think. You know what I mean? And you can just even Transformers. That's why the question of is there life out there was so important because why not? Why isn't it? And that's what it's all about. To me, it's the part of the creative process.
Yes. I'm actually.
But good for you that you're
Yeah.
doing it and studying it and learning all these different skills.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I mean, I actually did theatre work as well. I did a musical drama club outside of doing my diploma in acting at college as well. And I've done musicals like Starlight Express, Annie, Camp Rock, etc. So I have to say I have had my fair share in things so far.
Very good. Good for you. Good. Well, good luck. Good luck. Get in there. Just never give up. Keep going.
Yes.
Show up. The secret is keep showing up.
Keep showing up. Yes. I will consider those words every day for the rest of my life after this.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
To
Thank
all
you
your
ever so
listeners
much.
and everybody that's watching.
Thank you ever so much.
Okay, no problem. Take it easy.
Take care. Bye now.